listening to It's Not Normal, It's Toxic with Dr. Heidi, a toxic relationship specialist. Here, we bring hope, healing, and freedom to those who have been affected by toxic relationships and emotional abuse. Learn to not only recognize a red flag when you see one, but have the courage to choose yourself and move forward in a life that's free from toxic control of others. Living in an environment that's not healthy for you can cause this type of abuse to be accepted as normal. The truth is, it's not normal. It's toxic.
Hey everybody, welcome back. You're listening to It's Not Normal, It's Toxic. Rid your life of toxic people. The podcast about toxic relationships. This is Dr. Heidi, your host. Hope everybody's Thanksgiving was great. Mine was different than it normally is. We talk about the holidays being a little iffy once you've been through and have memories and look back and try to move forward. From toxic relationships. It always has a little bit of inconsistency when the holidays show up. But all in all, I did enjoy my Thanksgiving and I was thankful. And now I'm thankful to be back and be working again. My work is some of the best stuff about my life. Today, I want to talk about a topic that somebody actually texted me this question a couple weeks ago. And I had to think about it. I'm the kind of person whose mouth goes before her brain, and usually what's coming out of my mouth is long before my brain goes, you shouldn't be saying that. So I usually don't ever have a lack of words to answer a question. However, this question did make me stop and think, and I literally stopped and thought about it for about 2 days before replying. Of course, the person who had texted me thought that there was something wrong with me because I'm very quick to reply to texts. And so I had got a text that said, "Are you okay?" And then I realized that I had kind of been thinking about that question, but then never responded to the text. So after I spent some time pondering this, I decided this would make a very good podcast. So today what I want to talk about is how do we tell the difference between accepting someone in a relationship and settling in a relationship? Because when I first started thinking about that, it had my brain a little bit confused. But as I processed it out, they're very, very different and stem from two different ground levels. Acceptance, by definition, is the ability to see that others have the right to be their own unique person, having a right to their own thoughts, their own feelings, their own opinions. When you accept someone for who they are, you let go of the desire for them to change or the desire for you to change them. Settling, on the other hand, is letting go of things that are important to who you are, what you believe in, how you would like to be treated and loved. And in doing so, we settle when we start compromising ourselves and our own needs to fit better in a relationship. The reason this is confusing is because I think when we start doing one, it's easy for us to convince ourselves we're actually doing the other. And when I started digging around, these are very, very different. Now, my dad, and the quote that he has said that has impacted my life the most is, "Inner peace is accepting people the way they are, not the way you want them to be." This one line, coming from my father in a time when I was struggling with certain people in my life, has been the most important thing the man has ever said to me. His point in this is that we cannot change people. We cannot ask them to change, and we cannot expect them to want to change who they are. They are who they are. So why does the difference between these two get so confusing? You cannot be accepting in a relationship at the same time you are settling. Acceptance should come from a place of love or kindness or at least caring. And again, accepting can be in any type of relationship. To accept somebody for who they are, you are not asking them to change. You are just okay with them being who they are. They are who they are, and you are fine with it. Unless you are being mistreated, controlled, abused, or manipulated. Then you may be settling and convincing yourself you're being accepted. Settling is compromising who you are to fit what they need. Why would we tend to settle in a relationship? Well, a few examples would be we may be settling in a relationship because we're fearful of either the person or consequences or what might happen. You might be settling in a relationship because you don't want to be alone, or you have a fear that you're going to remain alone. You might be settling in a relationship because we don't want to lose them. We don't want to lose that relationship. We don't want to lose that connection. You might be settling in a relationship because you don't want to cause conflict. You don't want there to be another fight. You might be settling because you're worried what people are going to think, and you want to appear as the good person. You want to take the higher road. You don't want to be the one that's always causing chaos. We will allow things, we will do things, we will say things, we will put up with things that our true self really wouldn't in order to feel accepted in a relationship. Now, settling in a toxic relationship is like everything else in a toxic relationship. It turns into a crazy-making cycle. We settle and we settle and we settle, trying to be accepted by someone who is never going to accept us. What are some examples of how we settle? Well, we quit doing the things we love, hobbies, things we enjoy, things that make us happy. We quit seeing the people that love us, that care about us, our support systems. We quit voicing our own opinions. We quit standing up for ourselves. We quit being our own person. We quit making our own decisions. We quit pursuing our own dreams, our own goals. We quit being who we are, and we start being who they tell us we should be or who we feel they will accept. Rather than accepting us and loving us for who we are, they tell us they will accept us if we change who we really are. All the while, they're refusing to change or refusing to do anything about themselves, forcing us to accept who they are and how they treat us. This brings me back to an example that I have used not only in this particular situation, but use this example from this situation to make a point in other situations. In my past and in my years in healthcare, I have never treated eating disorders, but I have walked several people through the recovery of eating disorders by explaining to them why the eating disorder sometimes happens. And of course, the perspective I come from is a perspective of trauma. People that grow up in highly toxic, controlled environments, they are not allowed to make their own decision. Their identity is stifled. They are told what they are supposed to do and who they are supposed to be all the time. Well, individuals soon recognize what they can control and what they can't. And many times, if you're growing up or you're living in a toxic environment, one of the few things that you can control is what goes into your mouth. So with total chaos going on around you, mistreatment, controlling stuff, criticisms, belittling, all of that type of thing will cause you to revert to what you can control. And if what goes into my mouth is the only thing I can control, we see a lot of eating disorders stem from that. But what's happening is this person just knows that when they can control what goes into their mouth, they feel in control because the rest of their world feels completely out of control. And it's kind of the same thing when we talk about settling in a relationship. We have no control over what they say or what they do. The only thing we have control over is us. So that's where settling becomes very, very messy. They're forcing us to settle by promising they will accept us if we accommodate to the demands that they're making. And when we settle, they're asking us to be totally accepting of them. So we're compromising ourselves to be accepted. And they're demanding that we accept them without them having to compromise anything. So what happens when we do start settling? Well, we lose ourselves. We doubt ourselves. We question ourselves. We lose what's important to us. We lose the things we stand for. We lose the things that bring us joy, the things that make us smile, the things that make us laugh. And we lose the ability to take care of ourselves. We are settling in a relationship to gain acceptance in a relationship that we are never going to be accepted in. Are you wondering if you might be settling? Now let me remind you, accepting someone is accepting them for who they are and not compromising yourself in doing so. Settling is compromising yourself to fit better into a relationship so you can put up with the other person's behavior. Ask yourself, do you gain energy or do you lose energy from this relationship? If you're losing energy from a relationship, you're probably settling. Does this relationship build you up or does this relationship tear you down? If you feel that this relationship is tearing you down more than it's building you up, you're probably settling. Do you feel better when this particular person is around, or do you feel more at peace when they're not around? If you feel more at peace when they're not around, you're probably settling. Do you ask, pray, beg for them to change, but then when they don't change, you don't do anything about it? If that's happening, you're probably settling. Do you truly respect who they are, or do you act like you respect them to avoid conflict? If you're acting like you respect them to avoid conflict, you're probably settling. Do you find yourself making excuses for the way they treat you and the things that they say to you? If you're making excuses like they had a bad day or they had a bad upbringing for the way they treat you and the things they say to you, you're probably settling. Do you feel like you do all the compromising with them and they seemingly are always getting their way? If you feel this way, you're probably settling. Do you feel anxious when they're around? There should not be anxiousness or fear in relationships. If you have anxiousness and fear in a relationship, you're probably settling. Is there intermittent good times sprinkled throughout the relationship and you hang on to those good times wishing it could be like that all the time? If you have those intermittent good times that show up occasionally but not outweigh the bad times, you're probably settling. Do you find yourself talking to others about your situation but not telling them the entire truth for fear of what they would think? If you're talking to others and not telling them the entire truth of what's going on, you're probably settling. Do you feel like there's too much involved now for you to change your mind or make a change on anything? There's kids involved now. The finances are all tied together now. We've invested so much time and so much energy and so much effort into the relationship that I should probably just stay here. If you're using the investment to keep you there, you're probably settling. Do you find yourself hanging on to empty promises that they've made? Promises of things yet to come and waiting for things to get better all the time and nothing really ever changes? If you're hanging on to empty promises, even if you know they probably won't happen, you're settling. Do you go through life ignoring the criticisms and the comparisons and the name calling because it's become so repetitive that it's just normal? If you've learned to ignore criticisms, comparisons, and name callings, you're probably settling. Do you find yourself digging and convincing yourself you've seen improved behavior? Oh, they were nice on Tuesday. Well, they didn't yell on Wednesday. I didn't hear a single criticism on Friday, so I think they're changing. If you're constantly hanging on and convincing yourself that there has been improved behavior, and bottom line is nothing changed, you're probably settling. Do you find yourself doing all the work in the relationship? If so, you're probably settling. These examples and a lot of other ones that can be similar, some in the same categories, some in different categories. If you feel this type of thing in your relationship, you're probably settling. Now, the trick here is we become so used to settling that we convince ourselves that we've just accepted them the way they are. We don't realize going through a toxic relationship that by the time we get to this point where we accept them for who they are, we don't recognize ourselves in the mirror. Why? Because we've been settling and compromising ourselves all along to fit so we feel like we accept them for who they are. So back to the difference between acceptance and settling. Acceptance is not asking somebody to change and loving them, being kind to them, and caring for them anyway. Settling is making changes within yourself to accommodate the dysfunction of another's behavior so that the relationship feels more accepting to you. Settling usually involves you taking on all the responsibility to make the relationship run smoothly, no matter the cost. The less smooth the relationship runs, the more of yourself you compromise. Ask yourself, if this relationship stays just like it is, I am happy with that. I can stay here forever. If they continue to be who they are and the cycle never changes, I'm okay with that. I can ignore the criticisms and the belittling comments, knowing that that's just who they are. Can I continue to be second in line with their needs and wants ahead of mine? Am I okay when they love with conditions, but when I mess up, they take their love away? Am I okay with taking the blame for things that are not my responsibility? If you answered yes to those above those questions, you are probably accepting. But if you answered no to those questions, you are definitely settling for less than you deserve. And again, the confusion comes in that we settle so much and compromise so much of ourselves that we convince ourselves we accept them for who they are, not realizing we are no longer who we are. Make yourself a promise that you will never again compromise who you are to convince yourself that you are being accepted.
Thank you for listening to It's Not Normal, It's Toxic. If your life is being affected by a toxic relationship, visit coachingwithdrheidi.com and take our free toxicity profile analysis, or schedule a personalized consultation with Dr. Heidi. You can also follow us on Instagram at Coaching with Dr. Heidi, or join our private Facebook group at Strength Within. Take your first step to freedom today. And remember, it's not normal, it's toxic.